Yo, what's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and today we're going to be reacting to CBS's mock draft. Now, this dropped, I believe, yesterday, so it's an updated mock draft with an updated draft order. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, and by the way, this is by Josh Edwards. But coming in at number 1 overall, we are going to have the Tennessee Titans going Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami. I think this is the most realistic option for the Titans here. There is a possibility where they pass on quarterback here. The quarterback class isn't the best. You only really have 2 guys in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders who are probably going to go first round, and neither one of them are really worth the first overall pick. But if a team really needs a quarterback, they're going to take a quarterback. And here Will Levis obviously isn't going to be the future quarterback for the Titans, at least in the long future. So getting a guy like Cam Ward who has a high ceiling and could really be a good quarterback in this league one day, I think taking him number 1 overall is completely justified and probably is what I would do as well. Coming in at number 2, we got the Cleveland Browns going Abdul Carter. That's a really popular choice for the Browns here. And if you're not going to trade back, because I do think the Browns could trade back, but I assume there's not going to be trades in this mock draft, I think you got to go Abdul Carter here. I could also see a Tetairoa McMillan as well, and even a Travis Hunter. But, Abdul Carter, pairing him up alongside the best edge rusher in the league and a Myles Garrett, just having the best edge rusher in the class paired alongside the best edge rusher already in the NFL, you can't pass up on that opportunity. Having 2 elite edge rushers, not many teams have that. Moving on to number 3, we got Shedeur Sanders going to the New York Giants. And yeah, the Giants are completely desperate for a quarterback. As a Giants fan, do I want the Giants to reach this far for a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders at number 3 overall? Not really, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You got to get your quarterback. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll got to end up picking their guy. And I think Shedeur Sanders is the most likely quarterback here. So, you got to do what you got to do. Shedeur Sanders is probably going to be the pick here if this is how the draft falls come draft day. On to number 4, we got the New England Patriots going Travis Hunter. And so far, these top 4 picks are what I did in my mock draft yesterday. So, with Travis Hunter, he's probably going to play cornerback full time, pairing him alongside Christian Gonzalez. That's a really good duo. And then also the Patriots need, receiving production desperately. And I think Travis Hunter could provide that as a part-time receiver, maybe play 10 to 15 snaps on offense and then be a full-time cornerback as well. I think that kind of fixes 2 needs in one. So I love Travis Hunter's fit here at number 4 overall. On to number 5, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars going Mason Graham. And if the board falls like this, I think they got to go with either Mason Graham or Will Johnson, who is the cornerback out of Michigan. Mason Graham here, though, pairing him alongside with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen, forms one of the better defensive lines. So, I'm not mad at that pick at all. I think that they can't go wrong here with Mason Graham. On to number 6, we got the Las Vegas Raiders going Tetairoa McMillan, and I did this as well in my mock draft yesterday. Basically, my explanation was Brock Bowers has wide receiver 1 type of production, but he's not a wide receiver 1, he's a tight end. Getting a wide receiver 1, a big X receiver, and a Tetairoa McMillan can open a lot of things up in the middle for Brock Bowers, and it also allows Jacoby Myers to slide into that number 2 receiver role, which I think fits him a lot better. They absolutely need a quarterback desperately, but, hopefully they can sign a bridge quarterback in free agency and then go full 100% all in on a quarterback in next year's draft who looks to have a lot better quarterback selection in 2026. And it also allow them to go into a really good situation having Tetairoa McMillan, Brock Bowers to throw to. So I like Tetairoa McMillan a lot if the 2 quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, are off the board. On to number 7, we have the New York Jets going Will Campbell out of LSU, and the Jets are looking like they're going to go into a full rebuild. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Hassan Reddick are most likely not going to be on the team anymore. So you got to kind of go best player available. Will Campbell's a really good offensive lineman prospect. They have him listed at tackle here, and I think he could play tackle, but I think he could also move into guard. I guess here they have him at tackle. Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith are both old and probably not in the long-term future. They took Olu Fashanu last year in the first round to be that left tackle, and then hopefully Will Campbell can either play right tackle or be a really, really good left guard for him. I like that pick a lot. It makes sense. On to number 8, we got the Carolina Panthers going Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan. I just like going defense for the Panthers. I think it's best player available on the defense for the Panthers, and in this scenario, I think Will Johnson is that. pairing him alongside J.C. Horn makes a really good young cornerback duo. They would just have to fix their pass rush situation either in free agency or in day 2 of the draft, because that is also a desperate need for him. On to number 9 here, we got the Saints going Mykel Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. And do I think the Saints need edge rush help? Yes. Carl Granderson is most likely the only solid edge rusher on the team because Chase Young is most likely going to be leaving in free agency. So getting a guy like Mykel Williams, I understand the reasoning, but I just don't think Mykel Williams, I don't know, I don't think he's worth a top 10 pick. I'd like him a lot better in the middle of the first round because, you know, all the athletic traits is there for a guy like Mykel Williams, but he hasn't put it together at Georgia. He's not been the most productive guy in the world. I think you could also go maybe even a Malachi Starks here because their safety situation isn't the best as well. I think there are better options to go here than Mykel Williams. If you want to go edge rusher, I would go with a James Pierce Jr. or even a Mike Green in my opinion. So I like the reasoning here. I just don't like the player they actually took. Moving on to number 10 here, we got the Bears going James Pierce Jr., who I was just talking about. And, you know, this is one of the first mock drafts where I haven't seen the Bears go offensive line. You know, Will Campbell's off the board, so, you know, I could still see them going a Kelvin Banks, a Josh Simmons, or maybe even a Kelvin Banks Jr. You know, I still think they could go offensive lineman here, but, you know, if they don't go offensive line, I think pairing up James Pierce Jr. with a Montez Sweat could be a really fun pairing. But I think they got to fix that offense more than they got to fix that defense. Get Caleb Williams protection should be, you know, option number 1. And I know there's a lot of good offensive linemen in free agency it's looking like, but, you know, if they strike out in free agency on offensive line, they got to go offensive line in the first round no matter what. But I also like James Pierce. I'm not mad at that pick either. On to number 11, we got the 49ers going Shamar Stewart, the defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. I think he's a bit of a tweener. You know, he could play 3-tech or he could play, you know, down on a 3-point stance in a 4-3 defensive line front. So I like that pick a lot. I like the player as well, but again, I could also see them going offensive tackle as well. Josh Simmons, a Kelvin Banks. I think that's more of a possibility than a Shamar Stewart. On to number 12, we got the Cowboys going Ashton Jeanty. Everyone already knows about this fit. It's a very good fit, but, you know, it's a bit played out. It's a bit obvious, but yeah, it's a good pick. On to number 13, we got the Dolphins going Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. And yeah, Jonnu Smith, I don't know if he's a free agent, and he had a really good season for him. So is tight end their biggest need? Probably not. I'd really want to go offensive line for them as well. And with these tackles falling, I could see the Dolphins going tackle, but I also like Tyler Warren. I could see the philosophy of going Tyler Warren, but I think edge rusher and offensive tackle is a bit of a bigger need than tight end. On to number 14, we got the Colts going Malachi Starks. Yeah, the Colts like their height, weight, speed freaks on the defense, more preferably in the secondary, and that's what Malachi Starks is. That's a really good fit, really good player. I like that pick a lot. On to number 15, we got the Atlanta Falcons going edge rusher. Like I say in a lot of my mock drafts and mock draft reactions, they need to go pass rusher. They had one of the worst pass rushers in the NFL last season, so getting a guy like Jalen Walker, I like that a lot. And the good thing with Jalen Walker is he's a bit of a more versatile piece as an edge rusher. You know, at Georgia, they had him playing off-ball linebacker a lot. Do I think he's better at rushing the passer? Yes. But he also has the ability to drop back in coverage as well. And I think a defensive-minded head coach like Raheem Morris could really utilize Jalen Walker to his fullest abilities. On to number 16 here, we got the Arizona Cardinals going Derek Harmon, the defensive lineman out of Oregon, and I like that pick a lot. I like going defensive line for the Cardinals a lot more, you know, more specifically interior defensive line. I went Kenneth Grant for him in my mock draft yesterday. Derek Harmon, I think, is a really good option as well. You know, he was known more of a run stuffer, you know, in college, but this past season at Oregon, he really became a more penetrating defensive lineman, so you can kind of get the best of both worlds with Derek Harmon, so I like that pick a lot for the Cardinals. On to 17 here, we got the Bengals going Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama. Okay, you know, they desperately need help on that defense. I would much rather go with a defensive player for the Bengals, either edge rusher, defensive lineman, cornerback, but you know, if you're going to go offense, I could also see maybe a Luther Burden here. You know, offensive line, you know, they could use offensive line, but I just think Tyler Booker is more of a day 2 prospect. If you desperately wanted to go with a guard here, you could have went with a Donovan Jackson, which is a really good guard, but also has tackle flexibility as well. On to number 18, we got the Seahawks going Nick Emmanwori, the safety out of South Carolina. And you don't see him in many first-round mock drafts. I think he's a really, really good safety, but I think he's a bit of a day 2 player. Again, the Seahawks need offensive line help. You could go with a Donovan Jackson here. You could go with offensive tackle, like I believe a Kelvin Banks is still on the board, as well as a Josh Simmons. So I like offensive line better, but Nick Emmanwori I really like, so I can't be too mad at it. Pick number 19, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going Luther Burden, the receiver out of Missouri. I like going edge rusher for the Buccaneers a lot, and there's still a few left on the board. I think a Mike Green still on the board, Jack Sawyer still on the board, so I could see that as well. Nick Scorton also I believe is on the board, but if they're not going to go edge rusher, getting a receiver, Chris Godwin's probably done. He's a free agent, and he also is coming off a very horrific injury. You know, Mike Evans is up there in age, so I could see them going receiver here. If a guy like Luther Burden falls to them at 19, I like that pick. Moving on to 20 here, we get the Denver Broncos going Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. You know, tight end is a very popular pick for the Broncos, and I think it makes a lot of sense for them. They don't really have a good receiving tight end at all, and I think Colston Loveland is one of the better tight end prospects in this draft, and I think he could give Bo Nix a really solid option, and we all know Sean Payton loves to utilize tight ends. On to number 21, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers going Emeka Egbuka, the receiver out of Ohio State. And, you know, I know a lot of Steelers fans say, oh, we don't go receiver in the first round. We're so good at picking them in day 2 of the draft. And while that is true, you need a receiver. And if one of the top 3 receivers in a Luther Burden or an Emeka Egbuka is still on the board here at 21, you have to take him. George Pickens cannot do it by himself. Roman Wilson didn't see much playing time at all, so you need to get a good receiver, and Emeka Egbuka is just that. On to 22, we got the Chargers going Donovan Jackson, who I've talked about a lot in this video already. I think he's a really good guard prospect, a first-round worthy guard prospect, and even if you wanted to play him at tackle, I think he could do that as well, because he's proven to be a pretty good tackle for Ohio State right now, so I like that pick a lot. I think he's a versatile piece. That's what Jim Harbaugh loves on his offensive line, so I like that pick a lot. It makes a lot of sense. On to 23 here, we got the Green Bay Packers going Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame, and the only thing with him is he's got a hip injury. Not a lot of people know a lot about the injury. We'll get a lot more clarity once he does his medicals at the combine. So until then, I'm gonna assume that he's healthy, and I think he's a first round talent undoubtedly. I think he's a top 10, top 15 talent. So falling here to 23 to the Packers, I like that pick a lot. Jair Alexander is typically hurt. Benjamin Morrison I think could be a cornerback 1 for them. On to 24, we got the Vikings going Jonas Savaiinaea, the offensive tackle / guard out of Arizona. I think he's more of a day 2 guy. I think with cornerback prospects like Trey Amos and Jahdae Barron still on the board, I think those are more likely options for the Vikings. They need secondary help desperately, and I could also see them going running back here. Amarian Hampton, Caleb Johnson. I think one of those guys going in the first round is very possible. Aaron Jones is, I believe, a free agent. They could use a running back as well. Jonas Savaiinaea is really good, but I think he's a really good day 2 player. On to 25 here, we got the Texans going Walter Nolan, and Walter Nolan has had just such a good season at Ole Miss. I think he's definitely a first round prospect. I like that pick a lot, but I could also see them going offensive line as well. I think they got to go trenches either way, so Walter Nolan, I like that pick a lot. 26, we got the Rams going Josh Simmons, and if he's here at 26, then yeah, take him. I don't think he's going to be here at 26 though. Before I believe he tore his ACL for Ohio State, he was having a really good season for him. I think he played himself into the first round. As long as his ACL is fine, I think he's going to go a lot higher than this. But the Rams need offensive line help a lot. Alaric Jackson is, I believe, a free agent, and Rob Havenstein is, I believe, up there in age as well. So getting a good young tackle is really, really important for them. I could also see them going quarterback, though. I think they might be a sneaky Jalen Milroe pick as well. On to 27, we got the Ravens going Nick Scorton, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M. And the thing with the Ravens, a lot of people say, oh, their secondary sucks. They let up a lot of passing yards this last season. So I understand that, but I think a lot of that had to do less with their secondary and more with their pass rush. You got to be able to rush the passer in order for the cornerbacks to be able to do what they do best, which is cover. So getting a guy like Nick Scorton pair alongside Nnamdi Madubuike in the middle, and then have David Ajabo and Adafe Owe kind of be rotational guys and have Nick Scorton be that more mainstay on that defensive line. On to 28, we got the Lions going Landon Jackson, the massive edge rusher out of Arkansas. He's 6'7", 280 pounds, massive guy, and I could see him being a French first-round player. I like the Lions going edge rusher a lot. They need someone alongside Aiden Hutchinson to be the long-term future edge rusher, and I think Landon Jackson could be that guy. I also like Jack Sawyer a lot as well. Mike Green is still on the board. I think that would be a really fun pick for the Lions, so I like the edge rusher pick. I might have went someone besides Landon Jackson, though. Maybe a Jack Sawyer or a Mike Green. Moving on to 29, we got the Commanders going Josh Connerly, the tackle out of Oregon, and he's risen up a lot of people's draft boards. To begin the season, I had him as a fringe first-round guy. Kind of fell out of the first round for me, but I think he's back in the first round in my opinion. I think he'll have a strong offseason process, at the combine and stuff. So I like this pick a lot. The Commanders need offensive line help. They really need a lot of things. They have a lot of holes on that roster, and they still somehow made it to the NFC Championship. So props to them. They could use a receiver too. They could use a tackle. They could use an edge rusher. They could use a secondary guy. They could use a lot of things. Josh Connerly fixes one of their problems. I'm not mad at that at all. On to number 30, we got the Bills going Tyleik Williams, a defensive tackle out of Ohio State. And the thing with Tyleik Williams is he's going to be a very, very good run stuffer for the Bills, which is kind of what they need. So I understand the pick here, and I like it a lot. But the only thing with Tyleik Williams that is kind of holding him back is his pass rush production. He's just not a great pass rusher or even a great penetrator, at that defensive tackle position. But he'll really stop the run, and that's kind of what the Bills need. So I like that fit a lot. 31, we got the Eagles going Kelvin Banks, and yeah, if Kelvin Banks falls all the way to 31, which I don't think will happen, but if he does fall to 31, the Eagles are gonna, sprint to the podium to take him. Lane Johnson's up there in age. He's still playing at an elite level, but he's going to retire eventually. Getting a guy like Kelvin Banks Jr. in the building to learn behind him for a year and then hopefully replace him at that right tackle position, I think that's a chef's kiss, perfect pick in my opinion. And then rounding out the first round, we got the Kansas City Chiefs going Ariante Erzuri, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. And the Chiefs, despite having one of the better dynasties in recent memory, they haven't really had good tackle play. They tried with a guy like Kingsley Suamatea last year. Hasn't quite worked out for him. A guy like Ariante Erzuri, I like a lot, but there are concerns with him. Is he the most athletic guy at tackle? No. He will struggle against more finesse type of edge rushers, and he also ends up on the ground a little more than I like. He's a bit rounded in his stance as well, which I'm not a fan of, but do I think he's a first round caliber player? I think he's fringe first round, and the Kansas City Chiefs need tackle help, so I'm not mad at that at all. I could also see a Cameron Williams here as well, though. Wyatt Milam even, so good pick in my opinion, but you could also look to go different options as well. But I believe that is going to do it. Yep, it's only a first round mock draft, and I like this mock draft a lot. There were some interesting picks and some picks I definitely disagreed on, but overall I think it was a good mock draft. Let me know what you guys think though down in the comments, and if you liked the video, consider subscribing. And as always, I'm the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.